I wouldn't have volunteered to spend Saturday morning handing out flyers if I had known I would have been standing in the rain in the parking lot of Best Ways Market, and that even worse. Nelson had plans to leave halfway through our shift. I imagined the two of us standing in the sun, maybe down by the football field, Nelson talking to everyone and me handing out the sheets. Then at noon we'd quit and Nelson would say, "Why don't we go over to Estes Cafe and get some lunch?" I would agree, as I always do, and then when we were sitting there alone, I would talk to him, really talk to him, instead of just nodding and squeaking like the little mouse I am, or the little mouse he thinks I am. A drowned cat is what I look like now. We're standing in the parking lot because the Best Ways manager said we couldn't stand under the overhang where they kept the carts. I don't want you diverting my Saturday morning traffic flow. What he said. If Georgie were there, or even Christine, she probably would have argued with that man. But Nelson and I aren't confrontational like that. We do what we are told. We've got the flyers in the trash bag, and they're dry. I brought an umbrella, but it's not a very big one, and 2 of the spokes are broken on it. It's one of my mother's picked up at a yard sale, her favorite place to shop, ever since we've lived in this country. She thinks yard sales are the best thing about the United States. Maybe the only good thing. Sometimes I think my parents don't want to like this country. They complain constantly on how much things cost, and how hard language is, and how they can't get decent jobs. Who want to hire people who complain so much? Besides, no one made them come here. If Russia was so much better, why did they leave? It's so embarrassing when Nelson and Christine come to my house. I don't invite them very often, because my mother doesn't even try to speak English to them, just chattering away to me in Russian as if they weren't even there. She can speak some English, but she thinks she sounds silly, so instead she pretends that anyone else who speaks is invisible. My father will talk to them, but that's even worse. He runs his hands through his hair and gets so excited he is almost shouting about how nothing in America works the way he thinks it should. Christine always argues with that things are terrible here, or always agrees with him that things are terrible here, which eggs him on and makes him worse. Nelson, at least, just smiles and waits for him to be quiet so we can get out of there. Anyway, I offered Nelson a chance to stand under the umbrella with me, but I suppose it was half-hearted offer, because I was nervous about standing that close to him for such a long time. He had a hood on his coat, but he put it up and tied the strings under his chin. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm only here till 10 o'clock anyways." First, I'd heard of that. "I'm here alone," I said, wishing I didn't sound so pathetic. "No, Gretchen said she'll drive another volunteer out to take my place. Some new kid, I don't know him." "Oh, good, perfect. A boy I don't know. Even a girl I didn't like was better than a boy I didn't know. 2 hours in the rain with a strange male? My stomach is twirling already." I guess Nelson could tell I wasn't thrilled. The thing is, I told Shaquanda Nichols I'd meet her at the PBL today. I tutor her on Saturdays now, but it's hard for her to get out here on the weekends when there's no school bus, so we're meeting in the middle. The PBL? There is so much I still don't know, even 7 years in this country. I blame my parents for this too. They don't try hard enough to become real Americans and find things out. I suppose they don't know how. They ask me, why does this occur? How does this work? What does this mean? I try to know everything. Maybe I don't talk much because I'm too busy listening, and still things like this happen. Nelson says BFL as if everyone knows what that is, but I have to ask, when will I know enough? The Boston Public Library, in Copley Square. I nodded as if I knew it well. The initials had merely slipped my mind. Never would I admit that I'd been down in downtown Boston twice on school field trips. It's only half an hour from Scrub Harbor on the train, and my parents had never been to the city that the airport had which we arrived. I don't know who tortured I didn't know you tutored Shaquanda, I said. He nodded. I'm starting this week in calculus. The USISS program pays for tutors for any student who needs one, so it's a good deal for both of us. Shaquanda aces calc, and I make $7 an hour. Don't worry, I know what the USISS means. Urban students in suburban schools. Kids who get bust out to Scrub Harbor and other suburbs with good school systems from city schools that aren't so great. Now let me tell you why this is really such a good deal for Nelson. He got a thing for Shaquanda Nichols. I suspected it before, and now I'm sure of it. Nelson Coleridge doesn't need to make $7 an hour. His father is a vice president of a big insurance company, and his mother is a pediatrician. But playing on the tennis field, and co-editing the school newspaper, and being on the pickle staff, and treasurer of the senior class, and president of the political action club, not to mention the time it takes to apply to every Ivy League college there is. The guy has plenty to do without tutoring Shaquanda Nichols, and I doubt the PBL is halfway. We stood there, hardly speaking. Actually, Nelson was yelling. Folly Bay Information Meeting. Well, I handed out the soggy papers. Why did I volunteer for this torture? At least if somebody was paying me $7 an hour, I'd have a decent excuse for being here. I didn't even want the town's name to change. Of course, the organizers were too smart to admit that the meeting was really to talk everybody into voting for the new name. They pretended that they were just giving out information about it. But one look at the headline on the flyers and you know where the organization stood on that question. Their slogan was, "It's not just a name, it's an identity." Well, that was true. Already the kids at school were calling another Scrubs and Follies. I guess it shouldn't have surprised me much that most of the Scrubs were kids from my end of town, like Georgie, who probably would have been opposed to almost anything Gretchen Karstensen was in favor of. And the Follies, of course, were the rich kids whose parents had convinced them that living in a town with a snooty-sounding name was good financial planning. Christine was one of the only people I knew who lived on the expensive side of town, but was still a scrub. Of course, could always count on Christine to side with the underdogs. There's Gretchen, Nelson shouted, obviously thrilled to be relieved of his duties. Right away he headed off towards her cute little car, then stopped and remembered me, looking back and waved. That's the thing about Nelson. He's so thoughtful. It's impossible to stop liking him. From that time, I met Nelson in the 6th grade, when my English was practically non-existent. He's been nice to me. That very first day of middle school, as I was lost, trying to find my English class. And nobody stopped to help me, and I was afraid to ask anybody. But Nelson came up to me and looked at my schedule and said, "Follow me, we're on the same team." And when the science teacher talked too fast, I didn't understand the homework assignment, Nelson would explain it to me after class. And when I couldn't get the history notes copied off the board in time, because I had to look up and down so much to get the spelling right, Nelson would lend me his notes overnight. It just seemed that whenever I had a problem, Nelson would be there to help. So naturally, I became attached to him. But now I'm afraid he still thinks of me as that lonely girl with the terrible English in the iron white blouse and that too long skirt, always on the verge of tears. The truth is, I don't feel like that girl anymore, not deep down. My parents see the new me, and they don't like her. They think she's a smart aleck and much too American. I am careful now to dress right. I know the places to shop to get clothes that are not too expensive but look like everyone else's. Basketball sneakers, baggy jeans, and the right kind of t-shirts. But I don't know where to buy a new personality. When I go to school, even if I have the right clothes, everyone knows that I am the same tongue-tied girl who feels most safe with Nelson by her side. I'm too American for Russian parents and too Russian for American friends. Thanks for standing out here with me, Nadia. See you Monday, Nelson called. I waved back. Glad to help, I said. Glad to do anything you ask of me, Nelson. Just ask. Have fun in Boston. You can't imagine I was not so sincere about that. I just don't think Shaquanda is the right person for Nelson. Of course, she's black, but I never thought that mattered to him. After all, he dated Christine last year. I guess Shaquanda is pretty, but for somebody who never smiles, and she walks in a very sexy way, I can tell boys like. But she's so, I don't know, independent? Nelson likes doing things for her, helping out. But I don't like Shaquanda likes being helped. Probably not even with calculus. She never dates anyone, although now that I think about it, she probably has a boyfriend from her neighborhood in Spalding. I sometimes wonder how she can be so at ease here at school. How come she fits in Scrub Harbor did better than I do? I've been here for 7 years and I live in town. Shaquanda has only come here for her 4 years in high school. As soon as the school day is over, she gets out onto the bus and rides back into the city. She almost never comes to an after-school meeting or sports event. Some of the USISS kids don't seem that happy here, but Shaquanda seems fine. She's probably be comfortable anywhere. There is something she knows that I don't. The boys got out of the car. Then Nelson shook his hand, pointed at me, and climbed into the front seat with Gretchen. The boy was tall and had a long blonde ponytail. I don't like. It's too silly. He opened an enormous red umbrella, and 6 people could have stood under. Hi, I'm Adam, he said as he approached. You are Nadia? Hello, I said in the tiniest voice. I was glad Nelson had told him my name, so I didn't have to. As usual, he was looking out for me. So what's the deal here? We're just handing out papers. He reached down to rummage through the trash bag. I'll hand them out, I said. You can tell people. Maybe I could come up with an excuse to leave early. Adam could manage this job alone. Tell people? You mean like read all about it? Scrub Harbor changes its name to Folly Bay? He was so loud people all over the parking lot turned around to stare. If he was going to act like this, I'd leave immediately. Be quiet. It's just a meeting, I said. Nothing has changed yet. I know. I'm just kidding. He simmered down and smiled. What should I say? Just say Folly Bay Informational Meeting. That's what Nelson was saying. No problem, boss. But you know what? Why don't we stand up there under the roof instead of out here in the rain? The manager told us not to. We'd be in the way there. Adam snorted. Screw that. You're already soaked, and I'd just as soon not get that way. Come on. He hoisted the trash bag onto his shoulder and headed for the shopping cart area. I don't have much choice but to follow. I felt very nervous because I knew the manager would be angry and would probably yell at us. Adam took a bunch of flyers out of the bag and gave me half. Here, we'll both hand them out, he said. I don't like telling him what to do. I've been here for 2 hours already, and he just showed up. But of course, I didn't say anything. We handed out about 3 flyers before the manager came stomping out the door. His tie was blowing back over his shoulder, and he was coming at us with a pointed finger. I thought I told you kids you had to stand in the parking lot. You're blocking my customers from getting their carts. Even though I didn't like that people to be angry with me, I was almost glad that Adam was getting in trouble. I stepped back, but he stepped right up to the man. I'm sorry, sir. My name's Adam Russell. The thing is, sir, we're getting awfully wet standing out there in the rain. That's not my problem. You can throw the things down the sewer for all I care. Stupid idea anyways. You're in the way here. Adam looked around and handed me his stack of flyers. How about this? I can announce the meeting and help your customers at the same time. He put his hands on my shoulders, and before I knew it, he'd moved me 2 feet to the left. Then he separated one shopping cart from the pack, wheeled it around, and presented it to a woman who was just walking up. Here you go, ma'am. Enjoy your shopping. He gave her a big grin and slapped the flyer in the front of the basket. She took a cart from Adam and left. Well, service with a smile. Thank you very much. The manager put his hands on his hips and shook his head. You kids, he said. You're always got an answer. He made a growling noise in his throat and battled his hand in the air. Go ahead, as long as you don't cause me any trouble. Then he turned around and disappeared back inside. Adam had won. See? No problem, he said with a big smirk on his face. What an irritating voice he was, although I had to admit it was nice to be out of the rain. We handed out a few dozen more flyers without a word between us, although Adam kept blabbing to all the shoppers who needed cuts. Mr. Helpful. You're about the quietest girl I've ever seen, Adam finally said. Just shy, or hate me already. At first, I didn't know what to say, but the truth just popped out. Some of both, I told him. He laughed. I don't believe it. Hate me, maybe, but a shy person would never have told me. He didn't seem at all bothered that somebody would have decided to dislike him after only 20 minutes. How long have you lived here? I asked him. I usually don't ask people questions, but I guess he made me curious. Who was this person who said whatever he pleased to people he hardly knew? Couple of weeks now. You don't feel sorry for me, having to move at the beginning of the senior year in high school. I thought about it in a minute. I would feel sorry for some people that happened to, but you're not that kind of person who needs anyone to feel sorry for him, I said. Adam reeled backwards, pretending I wounded him. Whoa, how do you figure that, Dr. Freed? I was tired already of his joking around, because I know how it feels to be the new someplace and not fit in. I wish we were invisible. But we aren't like that. You like being new? You want people to notice you? I thought he would make some remark right back to me, but he didn't. He wheeled out a few more carts and then said, I do like people to notice me, you're right. But that doesn't mean it's easy to start a new school in your senior year. I suppose, I said. Really, I don't like talking to him at all. So when were you new? He asked. 7 years ago. 7 years? You're practically a townie by now, he said. That made me laugh, but not in a funny way. You think so? You don't know Scrub Harbor then, and you don't know me either. He wasn't smiling so much anymore, and that was good. He smiled was not a real smile, not one to trust. No, I don't. So tell me more. Where do you move here from? I sighed. I hadn't had to tell my story in so long. My friends had known it for years, and it made me tired to remember it. When we came from Russia, I said, wishing I wouldn't have to say more, but knowing he would ask, wow, Russia, did you escape? I mean, was it hard to get out? No, not by then. My father had some relatives living here, and they bragged about how good their life was in America. My family was mad. He couldn't have such a great life, too. My father was mad. He couldn't have such a great life, too. He thought, why shouldn't his rotten cousin have all the luck? While I was telling him all this, I was talking so much. Too much. So now your dad's happy? No, his cousin was lying. Adam laughed loudly, then stopped himself. Sorry, I wasn't laughing at your dad. You just tell it's so funny. So what does your dad do now? He was staring at me as if my story was fascinating. I wasn't comfortable with his eyes resting on me so long. Expecting something from me, and yet making someone laugh was such a feeling. In Russia, he was an illustrator, an artist. Here, he's a house painter, and twice a week he drives to Eldervan from the senior center to the shopping mall and back. I made a scale with my 2 hands full of papers. So there's good and bad. He hates the house painting, but the old ladies from the center are always bringing him coffee cakes, and at least now he can fight with his cousins in person instead of through the mail. I was a little disappointed Adam didn't think that was so funny. He passed carts to a few more shoppers, while I slipped flyers into the basket. His smile was more relaxed now, but he still had more questions. Did you speak English when you got here? I shook my head. Not much. I learned fast, though. I had to. Well, no wonder it was so different for you. I mean, I just moved from Vermont. I could already speak New England. He wanted me to laugh at that, but all I had give him was a weak grin. This Adam just liked himself too much, and he couldn't believe that I didn't. He didn't care about me. Couldn't bear the fact that someone on earth wasn't charmed by him. Nadia, is that you? It was hard to make out the face underneath the big yellow raincoat hat, but I recognized the paint-splattered jeans and Mrs. Pincus' voice, Georgie's mother, my art teacher. Hi, Mrs. Pincus. I was always kind of confused by how to act around her. Was she the person who encouraged me to try new painting techniques in class, or the one who made me wish I wasn't there when she yelled at Georgie about forgetting to unload the dishwasher or take out the trash? You're not involved in this Folly Bay nonsense, are you? Mrs. Pincus asked. She always comes right to the point. I'm just helping hand out flyers about the meeting, I said. I don't think I'm in favor of changing the name. Well, I hope not. It's the silliest thing I've ever heard. She took a flyer from my hand. Look at this. It's not just a name. It's an identity. Exactly. Scrub Harbor sounds like a place where people work hard and appreciate the beauty of the spot they settled in. Folly Bay, on the other hand, sounded like a vacation spot of nitwits. Georgie would have hated me for thinking of it. So sometimes you could certainly tell that she and her mother were related. Sometimes change is good for the community, Adam chimed in. Couldn't he ever shut up? Do I know, are you at the high school, Mrs. Pincus says? I am Adam Russell, Sr., the new this year. Mrs. Pincus teaches art, I explained, then waited patiently for her to share Adam's little homily into 100 pieces. Well, Adam, I think change can be terrific, too. But change for its own sake, just because people have nothing better to do with their time, is a waste. In this case, a waste of taxpayer money for a special vote, and a waste of people's energy that could be far better spent, mine included. She smiled and put the flyer back on the top of the pile. And you're, too, Nadia. Go home and paint me a picture of Scrub Harbor, and she called as the market door closed behind her. Wow, she's opinionated, isn't she, Adam said. She is. You're the one who's opinionated. You've lived here for 5 minutes, and you've got a comment to make about everything. Well, why shouldn't I? You've got your share of opinions, too. I admit, you don't always say yours out loud, but it doesn't take a mind reader to see the judgments passing over your face like a bad weather pattern. What? How come you don't like me because you're a scrub? And you don't think I'm a folly? I don't care one way or the other about the stupid name business. I only went to that meeting to get to know some kids, so I'm not a complete stranger to my entire graduating class. What a nerve this guy had. What makes you think I'm a scrub? Because my father is a house painter? What? No, you just told that teacher. You'll fit in right here, Adam, because that's the way this town thinks. We were scrubs and follies before anybody ever thought about changing the name. They ought to just split the place down the middle, and then we could both have the name we deserve. The rich people could be the Folly Bay, and the rest of us could keep the old name, just the way we keep the other old things in town. The old houses, the old cars, and old people. I was getting a little off the track, but damn, that Adam. He was really making me mad. He expected that I sail into town and everybody his best friend overnight. He expected to be somebody in 3 weeks, when I was still nobody after 7 years. He expected to be because of who he was. I don't care if he grew up in Vermont or California or Alaska. He was a folly for sure. We missed about a dozen potential flyers, receivers, and now we were blocking people's paths to the shopping carts. But I was sick of this whole thing anyways. Why are you getting so mad? Adam asked, as the palm spread out over his heart as though he was the most sincere guy around. I'm not even part of this town. How come I'm getting the blame here? You know what? I'm really tired of discussing this. I'm wet, I'm cold, I'm going home. I handed him the trash bag with the rest of the flyers in it. Have fun. Wait a minute, he said. I turned around just far enough to see him stick the whole bag into the big trash barrel by the door of the Best Boys. I'm not standing out here alone. I don't even give a damn about this meeting. I kept walking, putting my broken umbrella up again, though at this point it wasn't going to make much difference. It was a 20-minute walk home, and I'd be concentrate on the bath I intended to take when I got there. Will you just wait a minute, Adam said again as he came alongside me. Wait for... It's raining. No kidding. I thought maybe we could go get something to eat together. There's this deli place I just saw down the block. I stared at him. What was he trying to pull now? Smoke the peace pipe. He looked so sure of himself. I guess the girls in Vermont all fell over when he gave them the trust me smile. Not a good idea, I said. We wouldn't get along. I'd rather go home. Adam shook his big red umbrella so it popped up practically over my face. Fine. But one of these days, the big attitude of yours is going to get in your way. There's such a thing as being too sure of yourself, you know. He turned around and stalked off down the sidewalk in front of the mall. My mouth was hanging open so far I was taking in rainwater. My big attitude? Too sure of myself? Where was he getting that? I was a mouse, a chicken, invisible even to my friends. No more than a minor annoyance to the person I'd worshipped for 7 years. But Adam Russell, who'd known me for less than an hour and a half, who had hair too long and a laugh too loud, who'd probably left girls weeping in Vermont, who invited me to make peace at Esther's Cafe. Adam Russell thought I was sure of myself. Too sure. As a matter of fact, and for just a minute or two, I thought, maybe I am.